probably a good thing when we've got 10 best of threes in 6 or 3 weeks and 6 days of non-stop StarCraft. People want to see games, they don't want to see TalkCraft. I'll let you do the first intro because I don't know what you're looking at.
All right, in the bottom right-hand side, our red Terran player from Dragon Kaiser Gaming. It's going to be Oliveira.
The world champion himself. In the top left side, we're looking at the main base, the man who tried to get a couple of ladder points a long time ago by perhaps pretending he's Terran, but instead he is a Chinese Protoss. This is SCV.
This is a weird one, man, because I think it's going to happen a few times in this event, right? Where there's just some players we don't know as much about. And for me, SCV is absolutely one of those players where, I don't know what to tell you about him. You know, he's been in a regional once before in China, got knocked out in the group stages, and, like, that's his StarCraft history pretty much.
Mm-hmm. It'll be cool though, right? Just to learn a little thing about these players that we don't get to cast very often, we don't see a whole lot of, and basically there is everything to win, nothing to lose here, because no one is going to bat an eye if SCV loses to Oliveira. But if he even just takes a map, that's already something that we'll be talking about, as we have an interesting opening here coming out of Oliveira. Not one, but 2 barracks. So maybe a triple Reaper into double Hellion. That's kind of what I'm expecting whenever I see this opening.
Yeah, I wonder if this for Oliveira is a way to be a little bit safe sometimes as well, right? In case like super early aggression comes your way, you've got 2 racks to work off of. But also just sort of say, hey, look, I'm really quite good, and I'm gonna come at you pretty hard, and you've got to be able to defend from the very beginning. And if you can't do that, then I don't have to waste my time playing the macro game, because it sounds crazy, but this kind of opening can snowball if your opponent messes up the defense. So we'll see if that's something that maybe happens. It's going to be a good first test here for SCV as the Reaper pops out, and we'll kill off the probe of SCV.
Yep, and that probe obviously had no way to return home unless he would have recalled it immediately. But yeah, you have to be 100% certain that that is what you want to do. And maybe SCV after scouting is like, nah, I'd rather have a Chrono Booster 2 available. Because obviously as a Protoss, you don't have a lot of units early on. You often go one gateway into your tech structure, whether that's a Stargate or a Twilight or a Robo. So if you know your opponent is producing 2 units at a time and you're only producing 1, I understand maybe not using the recall and rather using a Chrono Boost when you need it the most.
Yep, as we get instantly resumed back into this quick hotkey issue for Oliveira. These guys play on new accounts specifically for this tournament, so sometimes there's a hotkey that's not set up here or there, so just a little thing we sometimes have, especially in day 1 or 2. A couple of these pauses as our Reaper comes across the map. First one to just poke around, and obviously he has just a single Adept out right now, and it's going to come down the ramp to start being a little bit of a defense, as the Twilight has to go down in the wall as well, so that's a good scout from Oliveira.
Yep. Interesting follow-up, by the way, by Oliveira. This almost is leading into like a 2-1-1, right? Where we're just going to have 1 reactor, 1 tech lab, quick stim, and then we're just going to move out with 60 Marines and 2 medevacs. The first time that those 60 Marines show up can be a bit dangerous as a Protoss. Like, if your units are in the correct position and you know that this is coming, it shouldn't be too problematic to deal with. But if you're out of position with the first few Stalkers and these Marines get unloaded in your main base, it could actually be game over immediately. Because this just shows up a little bit quicker than Stim Marines normally show up in this matchup, and I won't be afraid to admit that I've lost a couple times against this specific build. It's just weird because you look at it, you're like, this is not supposed to be that great, but yeah, if you underestimate it, you're out of position, it can once more snowball very quickly.
I kind of like it, man. When you're the favorite in a series like this, little builds that are just a bit quirky can do so much to throw your opponent off guard, right? And just to make them feel uncomfortable with the situation. And I feel like this kind of builds a sort of one way. If you pull it out against a stronger Protoss player, they'll probably be like, okay, I can adapt, I can change things. But for someone like SCV, who may be very set in his ways with how he's going to build up and set up, little changes to the builds like this and hitting slightly sooner, those are the things that can really end up being quite punishing. So intrigued to see if SCV can find a defense against this. For now, some Adepts moving across the map, and we do have the Blink most of the way done. It's 3 gates in total for him, so he is going to be heading into a decent amount of pressure, but not anything as committed as 4 gates, as the Reapers are going to show up a little bit too late to block the Nexus back at home.
Well, so far I do really like what I see from SCV, right? He's got a 10 worker lead, Wardy. That's absolutely what you're supposed to have as well as a Protoss, if your opponent is going double barracks before expanding. But yeah, he's just had all of his units in the correct position against this Reaper opening. He hasn't really taken any damage, hasn't struggled, hasn't pulled any workers. Goes up to 3 bases with a lot of confidence. And if he weathers the storm, that is the first 60 Marines with Stim and maybe a random Wintermine or 2 in the mix, he's actually going to be in a very good spot. But obviously this is Oliveira, this is the world champ, and his Marines just seem to hit a little bit harder than most of the other Marines out there.
Yeah, his Marines are something special, man. They've got that world championship kind of behind them, powers them up. And you have the Adepts still staying active, by the way.
It's gold ammunition, Waddy.
It's gold ammunition.
It's a little pay to win feature.
From the world champion Marines just do one more DPS each. It adds up, man. And there's a lot of them.
The Marines with the golden gun. Everybody that played GoldenEye will know how problematic that is. But here they are. They are going to stim. And this is obviously something that you kind of wanted to be in position for. You already wanted to shave off a couple of Marines. Shield battery not quite ready yet. Here come the Marines with the golden guns. I don't hate that force field. Just makes it a little bit harder for these Marines to commit as probes are falling. SCVs are falling as well. What killed 5 probes? A Widowmine, I guess. How did that Widowmine even get in? Or was it...
I just think it walked in?
Drop.
Oh, there's a medevac?
No, medevac.
Oh.
Yeah, it's still flying around in the top side of the map. Was that a single mine or double mine? Oh, double mine. Okay.
Okay, well, that makes up for some of the losses on the other side, where obviously the Adepts dove in at the same time. That's what I turned my attention to when the probes started falling as well. So, yeah, actually, we do lose a few SCVs, a few probes as well. And Oliveira still about, 11 workers behind. He is not in a hot position when it comes to economy. Probably still needs to get something done with the follow-up push, which is going to be with these siege tanks. And when once he gets a couple more medevacs on the way.
Yeah, no, what we were talking about earlier in the beginning, as the Stalkers are thinking of trying to see if they can accomplish something in the natural, but against double tank and a bunker that's well positioned. I almost want to say take notes up at 3 Zelda, but that's an inside joke, Waddy. I kind of feel that SCV is in a really good spot, and what I was going for before I saw the Stalkers poke into the natural is like, we expect Oliveira to win, and we expect him to look very convincing. So far, this is far from convincing, because if we would normally tune into a game like this, you are casting or anyone else, I open a stream and I see the Protoss in this spot, I'd be like, oh, looks pretty good for the Protoss, right? And you wouldn't even necessarily think that there is supposed to be a skill gap between these two and that one of the two is the world champ. Because SCV honestly is in a very playable spot. Oliveira does have a big army, has a powerful army, but without a third CC, this is basically becoming an all-out movement, right? And he pretty much needs to win the game as SCV goes up to 4 bases. Maybe that's a bit over-ambitious, but 1 Nova is all that our Protoss player needs to potentially win the first game.
He needs 1 Nova and he's got 1 Disruptor, Roddy. The only problem with that is you've only got 1 chance. At least initially he hits the Zealots. He also gets a Marine. We stim back up here. Super Battery's already popped. We're going to start moving down this ramp. The Bio will sit behind the tanks and let them tank a lot of the damage and just create a choke point against the Zealots. And now the Bio can chase up after these Stalkers. Super Battery's going to be fading away in a moment. We jump for the Disruptor. The Super Battery will save that for now. Do we have enough Bio to keep going with this fight for the moment? It looks like we just about do. We die for the Disruptor, getting that as well.
That Stalker warping was so unfortunate, right? Imagine if those are just Zealots a bit further towards the left. A lot of these Stalkers were very exposed. I want to say the fight is still close, but at this point, SCV is just lacking firepower. He was a couple of units short, and now he has dropped to 6 army supply, and that is obviously just not going to be enough. It seems that Oliveira will get away with it, with the final few Marines and 1 low HP tank, even though SCV has warped in a few more units, and is finally going to get that tank, sends forward another Nova. These medevacs are working overtime, but at least a couple of them still have a bit of energy. It really isn't a whole lot, but it's just barely too much, I think, for SCV to handle with.
Adobs gets knocked down, Nexus continues to take damage, and this really should just be a bit too much, because Extra Zealot's going to show up here. Let's see if they can make a difference. Of course, they're going in with an upgrade deficit, which doesn't help them either. Oliveira focuses down the Stalkers first, can obviously kite against the Zealots after the hips away from that Disruptor shot too, not letting that be a factor, and as he stims these Marines up once again, just going to keep on fighting. His reinforcements are showing up too quickly. Now he's going to jump on the reinforcing warp in, so you don't even get the blink back on the first Stalker or so there. Just problem after problem continuing to arrive.
Yep, the Nexus falls, the probes are pulled, but they will all fall as well. GG gets called. Oliveira does do what we expect him to do, and that is to take the 1-0 lead. But that really was awfully close, and I generally feel that if that big Stalker warp in, right when that shield battery overcharge was about to run out, if that was a little bit further towards the left, or we would have just ran back a bit further, warp in all those units in the natural, and a couple of those Stalkers would have been Zealots, I actually think he defends there. I think he keeps that Nexus alive. And then we're looking at a 4-based SCV against a 2.5-base Oliveira, and Oliveira really would have been in all sorts of trouble. Very close first game, way closer than we expected it to be.
Yeah, absolutely competitive, right? And like you say, a Zealot warp in different instead of Stalkers, and it could have been all the difference that you needed. Oliveira had to do damage right then and right there, and Yeah, he did it, but it wasn't actually a guarantee that that was going to be the case. So a fun first game. I mean, gives you hope for a fun series here. Perhaps obviously Oliveira's build a little bit weird, right? The 2 Reapers into then that 2-on-1, but just sort of not really doing much with it at first, I guess. It'll be interesting to see what he does going into a second map, which we'll be starting up in just a couple of moments. Getting our hosts are going, getting that one ready to begin.
Yeah, obviously we had the Marines with Stim taking that awkward route via the top side of Grass1, and that was a bit of a distraction maneuver for the Widowmine drop to come in. And even though that Widowmine drop did kill 5 probes, 2 mines did go down in the process of killing 5 probes. The medevac lived, so that was obviously nice for Oliveira, but I don't think that really was the start that he was hoping for. Either your mines deal an insane amount of damage and the medevac can pick them up right and they come back for round 2 or maybe even a round 3, or the Marines take a great fight. But neither of those things really happened, and obviously kudos to SCV for just having a good build, having pretty good defense, and yeah, slightly different warpins, and I really think he holds there. And then it would have been very interesting, because no matter if you're the world champ or not, if you're going up against a 4-base Protoss and you're a 2-base Terran with just Marines and +1, you're gonna have a pretty tough time.
Absolutely. So I was just letting our admin know what we are ready whenever the players are, just to make sure that we've, because one of the earlier games, I kind of forgot to tell them that we were ready, and they were kind of waiting on us, and I'm sat here waiting for the game to begin. But yeah, man, like, it could have been a game. It was close. It had some possibilities, so excited to see Babylon. What do you think for Babylon? Do you think this is a map that's going to work out a bit better for SCV, a bit worse? How do we feel about this from the PvT perspective?
I think it's difficult for sure. Just tanks are godlike on this map. Not just in TVT, not just in TVZ, but against Protoss, tanks are very good as well. And even if you're playing a style where normally you're maybe not too worried about tanks, like kind of what he was doing in the previous game, right? A lot of gateway units, stalkers, and zealots with charge. Even then, tanks are a problem on this map, just because it can be really awkward for zealots to make their way around all these, not just the side blockers, but basically the mountains that we have, the terrain that's going up and down, upper ramp as well. This is just a difficult map to play Protoss with Terran, and even late game can be difficult because the Liberators tend to be very strong in this map too.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point as well. If we get to that sort of stage where libs can just siege up, it's so hard to break through them. Everywhere's choky, right? Like everywhere's just a little bit, tough to push through if those libs come out and get set up. Obviously, that means that early pushes can also be very deadly too. One of those early attacks with tanks that then, as it continues, a couple Liberators show up a bit further down the line. If that doesn't get cleaned up immediately, that could be a problem as well. So I think SCV is going to have to play a very careful game. Maybe even a bit of an aggressive game, right? Take things into his own hands early on, just sort of stop Oliveira from being able to take control of the map and set up in, particular places.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. Maybe we can go for a wild, old school max packs opening, right? Or something that some of the Protoss players like is that 3-gate opening. I don't think it's that reliable, but it doesn't really matter. Because just sitting at home here and trying to play the nice macro PvT against a man who can be as freaking good and scary as Oliveira, I don't think that's really the magic recipe to victory.
All right, well, in the top left-hand corner to start us off for Mystery Gaming, our blue Protoss player is SCV.
Solid first game by him, though. Definitely memorable. Something that we won't forget about. In the bottom right side, we are looking at the main base of absolutely the favorite of the Asia region here at the ESL Pro Tour 2023. This is the world champion of StarCraft 2, Oliveira. I have to admit, by the way, Wadi, that it became a whole lot easier to call him Oliveira after he actually won Katowice.
Star Katowice was like, I'm very ready all week to explain that this is Time, and, Oliveira's new name, but, we're going to call him Time for you. Yeah, well, win the World Championship, and that's definitely a way to name change.
Ian Blue reminded me that while we were hanging out in the green room in the first day of I Am Katowice, we were talking about one of the TVTs. Maybe that was Oliveira against Clem, actually, and apparently I was like, man, I refuse to call this guy Oliveira unless he actually wins this entire tournament. And he's like, oh, yeah, well, watch me, Roddy. Call me Oliveira. I'm like, all right, I'm sorry, mate. Oliveira it is.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it was, he really just went out there and did it, didn't he? Okay, well, yeah, Oliveira, like you say, I mean, honestly, never changed to calling someone something faster in my life, I tell you that much. It's very true.
At first, I was just like, man, this is frustrating, and we just know him as Time, and Time is a cool name, but Yeah, after he did that as Oliveira, I haven't struggled. I haven't even think about calling him time one time. Like, he's just Oliveira, man. He's the world freaking champ.
The world freaking champ, as we do have our probe scanner around, and it is obviously a different opening, by the way, right? It's this double gas opening here from Oliveira, so he's got that faster factory, some, pressure he can put on, take that expansion a little bit later on his side this time around, and see what we can do with that as the Reaper also moves up into the natural for a little bit of a investigation in these early stages.
One gate fast expand into a Twilight Council once more for Mr. SCV, as he seems to be fine of the Protoss wall-offs. I feel like it's very hit or miss, right, when it comes to good Protoss players, whether they like the wall-offs or not. Sure, it makes your life easier against Reapers, but I personally hate it so much if I get like Marine tank push, and then you lose a gateway, you lose the pylon, you lose the cyber core, then you need to warp in a couple stalkers, and you don't have a cyber core. But yeah, obviously it does make your early game a little bit easier to keep track of those Reapers and potentially deny your tech. Last game that didn't quite work out, but or deny an easy scout on your tech, that is. But this time around it seems to be going a bit better for SCV.
Yep, Reaper doesn't do much. We do lose one probe on the other side, but it was going up to try and get a bit of info, see what the reactor is on, so you know it's now reactoring out bio units or Reapers or something along those lines rather than Hellions, so you get a bit of an idea as to what to expect perhaps. Obviously this is not uncommon once you've kind of set up into that earlier kind of group of units and group of structures. We do have, a start of a wall. There's a battery here. I don't think this is going to be too problematic. Drops the other building to help finish this off. We do lose the probe at the front, but not letting the Reaper Hellion in is very valuable.
Yeah, kudos to Oliveira though, right, for immediately realizing, okay, can't battle the Stalker, can't battle the Adept. Hey, probe, I'll take that. Like, it's the little things that obviously always add up in StarCraft 2, so just getting a little sneak peek up to the ramp there and killing a worker feels good if you're Oliveira.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and so he's going to try and just poke up here and just see if there's anything around, obviously pick up information, but you don't get to see the Twilight Council. If the pylon isn't in the wall off, the Twilight can also always build out of reach of being seen, so you don't know if that's a Twilight based on the fact that it's a Twilight Council, but you do see a lot of the Stalkers, so Oliveira does pick up some information still, if not directly through seeing the building.
Yep, maybe this is one of these moments where he's a tiny bit worried about some DTs being out on the map, but nothing on the production tab or in the main base of Oliveira suggesting us that he seems to be ultra concerned about it. I mean, he probably knows SCV a whole lot better than we know him, right? Look at the SCV count, by the way. It's only 28, once more, an 11 worker lead on the side of SCV. And I know Chrono Boost is good and all, Wadi, but most of the time we don't look at 11, 12 worker lead. We can also see Oliveira is just not producing any SCVs. I always get some Euthermal vibes, right? Because I feel that Euthermal was the OG Terran when it came to early SCV cutting and making strong Banshee tank pushes. Oliveira is not here to entertain us, he's just here to win, and he's going to try to get the job done with a very early move out. Marines without combat shield, without stim, but if they are protected by a Banshee and a bunch of tanks, they are still a problem.
Yep, this is just a real kind of get up and go army from Oliveira with so much DPS in it. Things can die quickly, but yeah, you gotta start killing them as the Stalkers have to blink back. That almost looked like as one died, the rest evaporated, but it was a blink back into the natural expansion as Oliveira gets set up over here, and that Robo is gonna have the super battery protecting it, but with double tank sieging up, I'm not sure we get that Immortal out, Roddy.
No, this is the new overcharge, which is not as good as it once upon a time was. And don't forget that one pylon is powering everything there right now. Obviously, if the gateways die, that's maybe not that much of a problem. But we will go for the pylon, so we don't just lose the Robo. We lose power to that battery. We lose power to these gates. And SCV is just in all sorts of trouble. He's got a 15-16 worker lead. That is great and all. But that's about to disappear as he's going to pull probe straight into the meat grinder. Tries to blink on top of this army. But this is not the kind of army that you can blink on top of. GG, guys.